There is a particular kind of cold that has nothing to do with the weather. It is the cold that settles into your chest when you are sitting in a room full of people who are supposed to love you and you realize, slowly, then all at once, that you have been invisible to them for years. Not overlooked, not forgotten, invisible by design. This story comes out of a small suburb just outside of Columbus, Ohio, where one woman spent 7 Christmases trying to earn a seat at a table she had been quietly funding the entire time. And what happened 11 days after that final Christmas dinner changed everything. Her name is Rachel Mercer. She is 31 years old, and at the time this story begins, she is working as a logistics coordinator for a regional medical supply company in Westerville, Ohio. She has held that job for 4 years. She is good at it. Methodical, detail-oriented, the kind of person who notices when something is off in a spreadsheet at 11 o'clock at night and fixes it before anyone else wakes up. She drives a 2019 Honda CR-V that she pays for herself. She has a studio apartment she keeps clean and quiet, the kind of place where you can hear the refrigerator hum and the upstairs neighbor's cat walk across the floor. She has 2 plants on the windowsill that she has managed not to kill for 3 years running, which she considers one of her quieter personal victories. She does not come from money, she does not pretend to. What she does come from is a family that taught her from the time she was young that love is something you earn through sacrifice, through showing up, through giving more than you take and never once asking to be thanked for it. Her husband is a man named Daniel Mercer. They married young, she was 24, he was 26, and she loved him in the way you love someone when you are still figuring out who you are. Quietly, completely. With a kind of faith that asks no questions. Daniel's family, his parents, Gary and Connie, and his younger sister Brianna, welcomed Rachel the way some families welcome a new appliance. Useful, functional, appreciated in the abstract, but not something you think about when it's working correctly. Gary ran a small HVAC contracting business out of a shop on the east side of Columbus. Connie managed the books. Brianna, 27 at the time of this story, had recently left a job she hated and was, as Connie described it, figuring things out. Rachel knew what that meant. She had heard it for 4 years. It meant Brianna was not paying rent, not covering her own car insurance, and borrowing money she would not return. All of it quietly funded by a revolving cycle of family goodwill that Rachel had somewhere along the way become the largest source of. It had started small, the way these things always do. A slow accumulation of small decisions that each seem reasonable in isolation and only reveal their shape when you step back far enough to see the whole picture. In the 2nd year of their marriage, Daniel came to Rachel and explained that his father's business was going through a rough quarter. A commercial contract had fallen through. Payroll was tight. Could they help? Rachel said yes. She set up a recurring transfer of $2,600 a month from her personal checking account into Gary's business operating account. It was supposed to be temporary. 6 months, Daniel said, maybe 8. Rachel did not ask for a promissory note. She did not ask for interest. She asked for nothing because that is what she had been trained to do, to give without a ledger, to love without a receipt, to trust that the people around her were keeping track even when she was not. 2 years passed. The transfers did not stop. By the time Christmas arrived that year, Rachel had sent Gary's business account $62,400. She knew the number because she is a logistics coordinator. She knows numbers. She tracks things. She had a spreadsheet on her laptop, not because she planned to use it, but because watching money leave your account for 2 years without acknowledgement does something to a person. It makes you quiet in a specific way. Careful. You start to pay attention to things you used to let slide. You start to notice patterns. Before I tell you what happened next, I want to ask you something. What time is it where you are right now, and where are you watching from? I am genuinely curious to see how far this story will travel. Drop your city in the comments. I will read them. Christmas that year was at Gary and Connie's house in Gahanna. Rachel remembers the drive over. It was the kind of Ohio December night that feels like the sky has been pressed flat. Low clouds, no stars, the temperature sitting at 28 degrees and not planning to move. Daniel drove. Rachel sat in the passenger seat with a ceramic dish of green bean casserole balanced on her lap because Connie had called that morning and asked her to bring something. Even though Rachel had not been on the assigned dish list and the request had come at 9 a.m. for a 2 o'clock dinner, she made it anyway. She always made it anyway. The house smelled like pine candles and the particular sweetness of Connie's mulled cider, which she made every year from a recipe she described as a family secret, but which Rachel had once seen on the back of a spice packet in the cabinet. The living room was warm. There were people everywhere. Gary's brother and his wife, two cousins Rachel could never keep straight, Brianna on the couch in a new sweater that Rachel was fairly certain had not been purchased with Brianna's own money. The table was already set. Rachel noticed immediately that the seat she had sat in for the past 6 Christmases, the chair to Daniel's right, closest to the kitchen, had been taken. In its place, at the chair to Daniel's left, at the corner of the table nearest the head, sat a woman Rachel had never seen before. Her name, Rachel would learn in the next 4 minutes, was Melissa. She was 34, she had dark hair and a loud, easy laugh, and she had been dating Daniel's college friend Marcus for about 8 months. She had been invited by Connie. She was seated at the head-adjacent corner. Rachel was handed a folding chair from the hallway closet and told, with a smile so practiced it had lost all its warmth, that we ran out of room at the main table. But you don't mind, do you, Rachel? You're basically family. Basically. Rachel sat down on the folding chair. She placed her green bean casserole on the table. She watched Connie pour Melissa a glass of the good wine, the bottle Gary kept on the top shelf, the one that came out only for people Connie wanted to impress. Rachel's glass was filled from the box on the counter. She noted this the way she noted everything now, quietly, without expression. She had learned in 7 years with this family that expression cost you, that if you reacted, you became the problem. So she sat on her folding chair with her box wine, and she smiled when she was supposed to smile, and she passed the rolls when they were passed to her. The moment that cracked something open happened 40 minutes into dinner. Connie was talking about Brianna. She did this often, orbited the conversation back to Brianna the way a planet orbits a sun, always returning, always warming. She was talking about a course Brianna was thinking about taking, interior design. It was going to cost some money up front, but Connie believed in investing in your children. Didn't everyone agree? And then Connie turned to Rachel, not to Daniel, but specifically to Rachel, and said with the smile still on her face and the good wine still in her glass, "We were actually thinking you two might want to help cover Brianna's enrollment. You've always been so generous. It's one of the things we love about you." The table did not go quiet. That is the part Rachel would think about later. No one flinched. No one looked uncomfortable. Melissa laughed at something Marcus said on the other side of the table. Gary refilled his own glass. Daniel, her husband, the man she had transferred $2,600 a month for 24 months, looked at his plate. He did not look at Rachel. He did not say anything. And in that silence, Rachel understood something she had been circling for 2 years without letting herself land on it. This was not carelessness. This was coordinated. The folding chair, the box wine, the last-minute casserole request, the seat given to a stranger. All of it was designed to communicate something specific, that Rachel's place in this family was transactional, that her value was financial, and that her feelings about any of it were not a variable anyone had included in the equation. She said she would think about it. She smiled. She ate her green bean casserole off a plate that did not match the rest of the table settings. She drove home with Daniel in silence, her hands folded in her lap, watching the Ohio highway lights blur past the window. She did not cry, she thought. The thing about working in logistics is that you develop a specific relationship with systems. You understand that systems are not neutral. They reflect the intentions of the people who built them. And you understand that systems can be changed, quietly, without announcement. With paperwork and patience and the right sequence of actions taken in the right order, Rachel had been operating inside the Mercer family system for 7 years. She understood it well. And that night, sitting in the dark of her car in the parking garage of her apartment complex while Daniel went upstairs, she opened her banking app and looked at the transfer that had been running for 24 months, $12,600. Recurring. monthly. To Gary Mercer, HVAC Solutions, LLC. The account was in her name, only her name. She had set it up, she had maintained it. Daniel had asked her to, but Daniel's name was not on it. Gary's business had come to depend on it so thoroughly that his operating account's average monthly balance, which Rachel had seen once on a document Daniel had left open on the kitchen table, sat at approximately $3,100, which meant that without her $2,600, the account would functionally bottom out within days of a normal billing cycle. She had not planned this. She wants to be clear about that. She had not come to Christmas looking for a reason. But sitting in that parking garage under the fluorescent lights, she understood something with the clean, cold clarity that comes when you stop pretending. She had been confused, for years, about the difference between endurance and loyalty. She had mistaken her own silence for grace. She had called her patience love when what it actually was accommodation. An accommodation without reciprocity is not a relationship. It is an arrangement. And she had not agreed to this arrangement. She had been enrolled in it. She texted her friend Dana, "I need to tell you something. Are you up?" Dana was up. Dana was always up. Rachel called her and told her everything. The folding chair, the box wine, Melissa in her seat, Connie's ask for Brianna's tuition, Daniel's silence. Dana listened without interrupting, which is exactly what Rachel needed. When Rachel was finished, Dana said 4 words. She said, "What do you need?" And Rachel said, "I need to talk to someone at my bank tomorrow morning." Dana said, "I'll come with you." The next morning, Rachel called in a personal day. She and Dana drove to her bank branch on Cleveland Avenue at 9 a.m. when it opened. Rachel sat across from a personal banker named Tomas and explained that she needed to cancel a recurring transfer. Tomas pulled it up. She confirmed the amount, the recipient, the account number. She authorized the cancellation. The process took 11 minutes. She signed one form. Tomas told her the cancellation would take effect before the next scheduled transfer date, which was the 14th of January. Rachel thanked him. She and Dana got coffee at the Tim Hortons 2 doors down. Rachel drank her coffee and looked out the window at the gray Columbus morning and felt, for the first time in a very long time, like she could breathe through her whole chest. She said nothing to Daniel. She said nothing to Gary, or Connie, or Brianna. She went home, watered her plants, and went back to work the next morning. She tracked the days the way she tracked everything. On a spreadsheet she kept in a folder on her desktop labeled Q1 Planning, which no one would ever open. She noted the cancellation date. She noted the date Gary's next payroll cycle would land. She noted the average accounts payable schedule for a small contracting business of Gary's size, which she knew from 4 years of watching Gary complain about vendors over holiday dinners. She calculated the approximate window, 8 to 12 days after the missed transfer, when the pressure would become visible. Then she went about her life. She took on a new project at work. She reorganized her kitchen cabinets. She drove to her mother's house for dinner on a Thursday and ate actual home cooking at a table where she sat in an actual chair. On the 9th day after the cancellation, her phone began to ring. The first call was from Daniel. She let it go to voicemail. His message was short and confused. Something about a call from his dad. Something about an account issue. Could she call him back? She noted the time of the message, 7:03 p.m. She did not call back that evening. The second call came from Connie, then another from Connie, then one from Gary, then Daniel again. By the end of the 10th day, Rachel had received 36 missed calls and received 88 text messages across her various threads with Mercer family members. She read every one of them. She did not respond to any of them. Gary's texts escalated quickly. The first few were confused. "Hey Rachel, something weird with a transfer. Daniel said you'd know." Then concerned, "Rachel, this is affecting payroll. Can you call me?" Then, by the afternoon of the 10th day, they shifted in tone. "I don't know what you think you're doing. This is a family business. You're hurting real people. You need to fix this." She read the word need 3 times in Gary's messages. She noted the way the language had moved in less than 48 hours, from asking to demanding. She found this informative. Connie's messages were a different texture entirely. They were warmer on the surface and colder underneath, the same quality as the smile at the Christmas table. Rachel, sweetheart, I'm not sure what's going on, but I'm sure we can talk through anything. Then, 6 hours later, Rachel. I have to say I'm very hurt by the silence. Then, by the 11th day, what you're doing to this family is not okay, and I think you know that. Rachel reread that last one twice. What you're doing to this family. She thought about the folding chair, she thought about the box wine. She thought about 24 months of 2,601 ceramic dish of green bean casserole she had made from scratch on 9 hours' notice. She saved all the messages to a folder she labeled Documentation. Brianna sent a single voice memo, 40 seconds long, in which she called Rachel cold and calculating and said she had always known. There was something off about her. Rachel listened to it once, noted the timestamp, and saved it to the same folder. On the 11th day, Rachel responded, not to Gary, not to Connie, not to Brianna. She called Daniel, and she asked him to come home. He came. He sat across from her at the kitchen table, their kitchen table, in her apartment, which was on her lease. And he looked like a man who had not slept in 3 days. She placed her laptop on the table between them, open to the spreadsheet. She had printed 2 copies of the transfer history, highlighted in yellow, 24 rows, each one 2,600, each one dated, each one initiated from her account. Total at the bottom, bolded, $62,400. She did not raise her voice. She did not cry. She said, I need you to look at this. Daniel looked at it. His face did something complicated. She watched it happen. The recognition, the calculation, the beginning of an explanation forming in his chest that she had no interest in hearing. She said, I am not angry, I am clear, and I need you to understand the difference. She told him she had canceled the transfer. She told him she had documented everything. She told him that if Gary chose to pursue any kind of legal conversation about the money, she was prepared to have that conversation with attorneys present and a full record of every transaction she had ever made on behalf of his family. She told Daniel she loved him and that love was not a transaction, and that she was willing to figure out what their marriage was, but that she was no longer willing to fund a family that had made her sit on a folding chair. Daniel sat with that for a long time. The apartment was quiet. The refrigerator hummed. One of her plants was sitting in a patch of winter light from the window, and she noticed, in a distant way, that it had a new small leaf coming in. She had spent a long time believing that the measure of her love was how much she was willing to absorb, that a good wife, a good daughter-in-law, a good member of a family was someone who gave without accounting and smiled through the subtraction. She had mistaken her own silence for dignity. She had let herself believe that being needed was the same as being valued, and that value, over time, would become belonging. It does not work that way. You can fund someone's entire operating account for 2 years and still be handed a folding chair. You can bring the casserole and fill the gap in the payroll and show up to every Christmas and every birthday and still be told, with a smile, that you are basically family. Basically, that word. She had let it sit in her chest for 7 years, like a stone she was afraid to move, because she didn't want to see what was underneath it. She knew now. Love that is conditional on your financial output is not love. It is a contract with no terms listed and no exit clause and a penalty schedule you only discover when you stop paying. She had signed nothing. She owed nothing. And she was done. There is a version of this story where Rachel storms into that Christmas dinner and overturns the table and says everything she has been holding for 7 years in one long, burning sentence. That version feels good for about 30 seconds. What actually feels like freedom, lasting, structural, quiet freedom, is sitting across from a banker named Thomas on a Tuesday morning and canceling a recurring transfer in 11 minutes. It is the spreadsheet. It is the documentation folder. It is not screaming. It is the decision, made in a parking garage on a cold Ohio December night, to stop arranging yourself around people who will never make room for you. So here is what I want to ask you. If you were sitting at that table, would you have stayed or walked out? Comment one word. Done if you would cut contact. CH if you believe family always deserves one more chance.